focus on those economy related articles more than anything else. We'll directly go to those articles. Yeah, this is the first article that I want you to focus on. Okay. Fiscal rankings can act as a policy nudge and create states to lower debt ratios. This is the first article. Before I get into the details of the article, I'll try to set a context. Taxation powers of the state and taxation powers of the center. According to you, from whatever knowledge you have, who will have more power? Center. When it comes to tax power. Now, where do you see the largest chunk of expenditure for states? Expenditure for states. Take a look at different subjects. Let's say, for example, health. Health is under which list? Education. So, on one hand, you have expenses at state level, but the taxation powers are with the center. What will happen now is a mismatch between the responsibility and the power. So you are at the mercy of the center. So in this dilemma, states are forced to go towards debt. They raise debt to fund their day-to-day activities. But why is this a problem? When I say day-to-day activities, mostly I am talking about the expenditure aspects. The other side of the problem is that they don't have lot of funding sources. See, when you don't have taxation power, forget about states and every complex idea. Consider yourself. Let's say you went to a bank and bank asks you for a proof that you are worthy enough of repaying a loan. Now, if you say that I don't have a job, do you think the bank will feel confident enough to give you that money? No, right? That is the same case here. Apart from this, there are other important policy changes that are happening. Firstly, when it comes to the debt raising capacity of the states, we don't have clear data. Firstly, taxation powers are not there. Secondly, we do not have a real-time picture of the data. Whether it comes to CPI, Consumer Price Index, or household consumption, we don't have regular periodic updates on this aspect. Why are these important? If we want to talk about the health of a state, ultimately what is, when I mean state here, the sub-federal units, sub-national units. States' purpose is to take care of the welfare of the people, right? In that context, they should know what is affecting them financially. The problem here is that there are a lot of assumptions that go behind many freebie kind of policies. See, there is a mismatch between the actual needs of the people and the freebie based electoral governance. This is causing a lot of problem in outcomes. Ultimately, money is spent, but there is no outcome. I will tell you one example. Take a look at the health expenditure. Take a look at every state's health expenditure. It is incurring a lot of cost. Say for example, we have in Telugu states itself, we have this Arogyashri, which is an insurance-based model. Definitely, it has made things much better than what it was before. But the question comes: is this the most ideal way to spend it? When it comes to education, also, we have this fee reimbursement kind of a scheme. Is money alone enough to ensure the intent into translate that intent into welfare. Don't you think we should move towards outcome based budgeting? But for all of that to happen, we need to empower the states and give them the responsibility to decide what is good for them. You cannot dictate from the center. But for all of this to happen, states should have some free hand. So, center is proposing that we come up with something called fiscal rankings. Fiscal rankings is nothing but a report card kind of a thing. Whichever state is doing better in terms of its debt management, in terms of how it is meeting the FRBM targets. What are FRBM targets? See, you need to have some fiscal responsibility, meaning you cannot indiscriminately borrow loans and spend it just like that. Here is where the entire freebie model of governance and the so-called Revdi culture, all of that will come into this context. So here the article talks about how CPI is being revised, household consumption expenditure survey. All of this will give updated data, and these data pointers will be used by the policy makers to come up with this fiscal rankings so that we have better outcomes. This is the gist of the article. In this context, homework, article 293. When it comes to taking debt, state should take the permission of the center. What are the conditions? Conditions under which states can take debt. And why is it like this? Read this. And keep a tab on the 16th Finance Commission updates. Anything that will be coming on the news, please watch that. What is Finance Commission? According to Article 280 of the Indian Constitution, Finance Commission is the body that is responsible for dividing whatever tax money that is coming into the treasury. How do we divide that among the states? There needs to be a formula, right? That formula is given by Finance Commission. And this changes from time to time, because every time period need not be in the same way. So, this is how the financial architecture of India is arranged. There is certain level of autonomy at the center, certain level of autonomy at the state level. There needs to be coordination based on certain conditions through macroeconomic real-time data. This is the gist of this article. Moving on. Revision of Bihar electoral rolls. Why and how? See, electoral rolls means the list of voters. They should be updated from time to time, because people take birth, when like new voters come into the electoral politics. Then you will also have some people passing away, and they need to be removed. These changes, and if there are any shift in your constituency levels, all of them should be updated from time to time. This is done as per Representation of People Act 1950. There are two acts. Okay. Article 326 gives the right to, yesterday I gave you one homework. What is Article 326? Is it right? Which right? What is the official answer? According to which year? You should also remember, like, just if some questions are coming, remember them verbatim, including the years. Just check once again. Okay? I might be, I think I'm right, but okay. Anyway, see the link between these two. Now, coming back, when it comes to electoral politics, the first step is to have a list of voters. All that is fine. It is based on RPA 1950. But the context of this article is the demographic change. Article 9 of the Indian Constitution empowers the Parliament to come up with any law that dictates how citizenship should be given to its people. There is a fear in the eastern part of the country that because of the immigration, there is a demographic shift. So the government wanted to take up measures that this demographic shift is not impacting electoral politics. In a bid to fix this electoral imbalance, the demographic imbalance, the government thought we will revise the electoral rolls and make it mandatory to fill one form. Anyone who is registered in the electoral rolls after 2003, they are asked to show a proof of citizenship. Okay? Is Aadhaar a proof of citizenship? Yes or no? This is one of the trap questions that you can get in UPSC. What can be accepted as a proof of citizenship? How can you apply for a voter ID? Birth certificate. What if you don't have a birth certificate? Exactly. There is nothing, there is no official procedure to prove that you are a citizen. Even if you have a birth certificate, you know how easy it is to get birth certificate. You can't link it to Aadhaar because you have the Puttaswamy judgment, which is saying that you have right to privacy and Aadhaar cannot be the basis for your citizenship. How do we solve this conundrum is a big question. On one hand, you have no document which can prove that you are a citizen. On the other hand, if you want to do that, it's not that difficult to manipulate. So we are running around in circles. And that's the biggest problem of this. We already discussed this citizenship issue previously. Moving on. Seville Declaration. This can be an important prelims theme. Seville Declaration or the UN commitment on financing for development. FFD4. It is the fourth such conference. See, we will have more developments on this, but I'll tell you the broader agenda. The world is divided into haves and have-nots. So it is the responsibility of the developed world on a principle of common but differentiated responsibility. Please note this down. The same funda is used even in climate finance. Write this down, CBDR. Common but differentiated responsibility. See, some countries like UK, US, etc. in context of climate change only I'm talking now, the developed world, EU, US, and all the developed countries of OECD, another organization, please take this as a homework. I've already given you this homework. I hope you did it. What is the difference between these countries, G20, G7, etc. Okay? Anyway, the so-called developed countries, they took advantage by burning a lot of fossil fuels, and now they are talking about green energy, green transition, because that is the new market for them. Because their life is settled and sorted now, they want to focus on green transition. How about the countries like India, which cannot afford to move away from these fossil fuels, primarily because it's too expensive to move towards green transition. And yet, we are doing a lot. Okay? So there is a moral responsibility for a lot of countries, especially in the developed world, to take up more responsibility to fix this problem. This is the funda of common but differentiated responsibilities, and the same logic should be applied for overall idea of a development. Development as such is not just about money. It is about empowerment, development as freedom. There is a book called Development as Freedom written by Amartya Sen, where the whole argument of that book is we should be in a position to empower individuals, because ultimately development means the freedom to do whatever we want to explore our potential. Of course, there are reasonable restrictions, but I'm not talking about that extreme lunatic case of a freedom. We're talking about a very practical sense of freedom where we get opportunities to explore our potential. That is the whole funda. Now, in this context, this conference is about these countries which are developed to take up responsibility to fix the issues, whether it is in terms of global aid, whether it is in terms of financing. We had this SDGs, 17 SDGs, which are considered to be the targets that world collectively should move towards to bring stability and peace. But the biggest handicap in achieving that is obviously money. How do we mobilize that money is the whole question. And periodically we will come up and meet in these conferences to decide how do we do that. As usual, President of United States decided to opt out because there's no transactional benefit for the US. So that is the whole funda of the Seville commitment. Please go through this. Everything is self-understood when you read this article. I want you to read this article just so that you get the context. This, next up. World Bank poverty line. In our GS3 syllabus, you have poverty and unemployment issues, and also in GS1, you are talking about poverty as a social issue. What is the difference in approach in GS1 and GS3? GS1 talks about the causes. Structurally, if someone in Indian society is placed at the lower end of the economic ladder, that is not purely because that person does not have money. There are access barriers, whether it is caste, whether it is gender, whether it is a intersectionality. Remember this concept of intersectionality? Intersectionality. What is intersectionality, everyone? Yes. When you have a vulnerability, let's say if a person is challenged physically, if that person is also subjected to caste discrimination, gender discrimination, if that person is also a victim of any crime, the lack of access to justice systems, so multiple such vulnerabilities converging and amplifying the damage that person will have and that person's place in the society is what we know as intersectionality. Poverty, because of its multifaceted nature, has this propensity to become intersectionality, a tool of intersectionality where individual's identity is reduced to mere animal existence. So in GS1, you are looking at the causes of poverty, whether it is caste, whether it is class divide, where rich and poor have differential access to resources, whether it is urban-rural divide, patriarchy, all the prejudices that are there in a society, how are they keeping people poor? That is what we study in GS1. But when it comes to GS3, it is purely an economic subject, which is the scope of this article now. But whenever you are looking at articles on poverty, you cannot look at them in isolation and only say, okay, I'm only going to read it from poverty angle of GS3. You cannot remove this GS1 aspect and only focus on GS3. Why am I saying this? The reasons are twofold. One, economic indicators are a proxy for the social conditions. Two, policy changes should reflect this social realities. So either from our understanding point of view or second dimension is solution point of view, you cannot isolate them. How is this entire discussion relevant in this article's reading? Let me explain. World Bank defines poverty in numericals, numbers. It divided the world into certain brackets. Say for example, if $2.3, is it 2.3? One second, yeah. I am bad with remembering numbers, so please forgive me if I'm forgetting the numbers. See, there is a baseline, $2.3 or something. If people do not have access to this $2.3, according to World Bank, they are in abject poverty. The cost of living for people is $2.3. According to the latest numbers, World Bank says that 5.75% of Indians are having less than this money, 2.3 or 2.13, whatever number. Anyway, okay. Second poverty line, the second base is $3 roughly. Overall, relatively speaking, almost 60% of the people are falling in the third bracket of World Bank. There are three baskets in which World Bank places people: $3, $2, $3, and $6 roughly. And we are not talking about exchange rate here. Please remember that. There is a concept called purchasing power parity. Let's take the very famous example that will be taught in the classes. If a McDonald's burger costs you around 60 rupees in India, how much would it cost in US? Let's say $2, whatever is the cost. It doesn't mean $2 is equal to 60 rupees, and don't try to make it as a foreign exchange conversion and say that $1 is 30 rupees. No, that's not how it works. Taking into consideration the purchasing power, the cost of living in that economy, the number is arrived at. It is dependent purely on the economic conditions, macroeconomic situations of that country. So this comparison, according to Indians, is probably not giving us a complete picture, because India officially wants to tackle poverty through a multi-dimensional lens, like we spoke in GS1. The causes of poverty are not uniform. It's not just economic. There are multiple indicators that keep people poor. If you don't have access to proper health care or health insurance, a single event like COVID can push people back into poverty. An entire generation's wealth can be wiped out in a single jhatka. So, the difference between the approach of Niti Aayog, where we are focusing on the multi-dimensional aspect of poverty, multi-dimensional poverty index, that is different from the World Bank approach. What is a more comprehensive picture in Indian context? Obviously, it is the multi-dimensional poverty index. So please understand this difference for prelims sake. And I want you guys to focus on this aspect. Okay? That is the funda here. Now, you know this axiom 4 experiment, where it is a experiment which involves taking human beings to the outer space. Where did we go? International Space Station. One Indian who was a part of this is Subhanshu Shukla, who is the pilot of that spacecraft. The whole article here is about the concept of docking. What do I mean by docking? Docking means the International Space Station is revolving, rotating and revolving around the Earth. So, if we want to enter into that, it's like the capsule that is flying should attach to that International Space Station so that people can enter into that. The whole experiment about docking is the point of discussion of this article. The technologies used here are LiDAR and sensors. So you need to focus on what this LiDAR and sensors are. That is a takeaway from this article. Okay. So these are the most important articles. The editorials of other newspapers, everything are pretty much repetitive in nature, and I don't think you have anything substantial to take away for the final exam. If there are any, we will cover them in the further classes. So that's it for today. Okay. So please take this explained page very carefully. Very important for your prelims. All these concepts are extremely important for your prelims. Basics should be very strong. Even the first article of Fiscal Federalism, go to my Telegram channel. I've posted some backlinks also. Also, when we were talking about expenditure, we are also supposed to talk about the global, GDP formula. How consumption is changing. I've posted one infographic today. The so-called Gen Z, you guys want to spend more than save. Why is this happening? How will this change things for Indian economy? There's a small article there. Please go and have a look at it. That's it for today. See you in tomorrow's class.